We shouldn't have a starting point for that election that if you're an Anglophone, you need automatically to vote for the Liberal Party of Quebec. Once there was a columnist who wrote better crooks than separatists. We need to get rid of that thinking.
There you go. That is Paul Saint-Pierre Plamondon today talking about Anglophones. David Heurtel is sitting in today for James Meny, who is under the weather. David is a former Quebec Liberal cabinet minister and political analyst. Good afternoon, David.
Good afternoon, Sue.
So what do you think of Mr. What's he known as, PSPP? What do you think of his...
I think our friend PSPP is, I think he's totally off message today. I think he's upset at the polling. Quite honestly, Philip J. Fournier at Quebec 125 came out with his latest projections for the next election, and now the PQ is clearly in minority government territory, which is basically a first for the last several months, if not year. And so when you listen to the entire press conference, quite honestly, this type of comments to the English-speaking community, that's not going to do much for the Parti Québécois, let's face it. And his French comments were even more destabilizing. I don't know if you heard this.
No.
But in French, and this is the big headline right now, because all the leaders came out, right, for their end of session recap, right? And the headline in French is that what he said, he came out against the Liberals, and he alleges that there are ties between the Liberals and organized crime.
Yeah.
I'm not making this up. Mm-hmm. That's what he said. He tried to draw a line between the Pablo Rodriguez scandal and illicit funds and organized crime. And even the parliamentary press was like taken aback by this and asking a question, well, do you have any evidence of this? Mm-hmm. Oh, I'll let the UPAC do its work, he answered. And while he's talking about this, he did not talk about affordability, did not talk about housing, did not talk about health care, did not talk about any of the issues that are the priorities for Quebecers right now. And who did do that? Christine Fréchette. And Christine Fréchette, during her press conference this morning, actually also did something that, if you go back to the presidential election campaign in 2024, remember Kamala Harris had a very hard time, and it kind of, was the beginning of the end of her campaign when she couldn't distance herself from Biden. Remember that famous question when she was asked, what would you do different? What would you have done differently than Joe Biden? And she couldn't answer that. And that really hurt her. Basically, the same question came up this morning. And she very astutely and directly and confidently said, you know what, I would not have been and will not be as confrontational as François Legault. I'm looking for consensus. I'm looking to build. And two, I would have maybe not been so interventionist with Quebec funds, obviously in relation with all this lost money, these over $2 billion in lost funds, or almost all of it lost in the whole battery fiasco, electric battery fiasco. But she went, and we just heard it in the news, her priorities are really lined up with Quebecers' priorities. Now, she has, her problem is being tied down by 8 years of Legault rule. But at the same time, if you're looking at leaving a last message before the summer break, before the campaign starts in August, I think actually she won the session. I'm not saying, hands down, but when you compare it to Charles Milliard, who is clearly in a downward spiral right now with all the polling, he is still fixed on the question being about, if you want to stop a referendum, you need to vote Liberal. Now, I don't think necessarily that's the best play. He's been saying that ever since he became leader at the beginning of the year. And what you're seeing in the regions is that it's not tracking. He is in third place on all the questions having to do with who would be the best premier, the best qualities to be premier. And the Liberals are at a dismal 15, 16% with Francophones, in third place again. Yeah. So I think PSPP is just, I think, again, demonstrating his Pierre Poilievre problem. The minute, he's short-tempered, he is arrogant, and he is not connecting with Quebecers on the real issues. Now you're going to say, well, why is he leading? He's leading because of the division of the vote. But again, over the next 3 to 4 months, what could happen is that will one party be able to collate that anybody but PSPP, anybody but the PQ vote? And right now, the best positioned person, if you look at the polling, if you look at the messaging, if you look at the momentum, it's not overwhelming. This is not a Carney situation, but Christine Fréchette right now has a bit of momentum compared to Charles Milliard.
Well, it's interesting because Charles Milliard, and I think we've spoken about this before, the man is not a career politician, and he doesn't seem to be able to pivot. Like the polls, he still is kind of, shrugging off the CAQ as a viable opponent and just completely concentrating on the Parti Québécois when the polls are showing, to your point, that the CAQ under Christine Fréchette is gaining and the Parti Québécois is losing steam. So it's kind of a disappointing showing from Milliard.
It really is, because when you look again at the polling, who's in second place outside of the greater Montreal area? The CAQ.
Yeah.
It's not the Liberals. And so compared to where we were, let's say in January, the CAQ was in single digits in voting intent. I remember polls showing the CAQ at 9%. I remember projections from Quebec 125 giving 0 seats to the CAQ, 0. And so now the CAQ is over 20% overall in Quebec, but in the regions they're in second place. And I got to say, and I've been saying this for months now about Charles Milliard, I don't know if it's him or who he's surrounded himself with in terms of a strategic communications team, but he simply has yet to define himself. Can you tell me? I asked Aaron this several times, and he couldn't find an answer, but I'm asking you, Sue. Can you tell me what Charles Milliard really stands for? What his brand is about?
No, not at all. But if you ask me that question about Christine Fréchette or about even Saint-Pierre Plamondon, I would be able to answer that question.
There you go.
So yeah,
and you're not saying you agree necessarily what they stand for, but Fréchette has developed a brand.
Yeah,
she has developed a persona. You can like it, not dislike it. It's up to you. But at the same time, same thing with PSPP. He obviously has a brand. But PSPP is demonstrating time and time again that he just goes off the rails because he's mad, because he's short-tempered. Remember a few weeks ago he was saying the RCMP is spying on me. The RCMP is spying. And everybody was asking him, do you have any evidence of this? No. And here we are today going on a press conference where this is the last press conference in the National Assembly before the election.
Yeah.
And his big message is to say that the Liberals have ties to organized crime with no evidence. If we were in any other context, Paul Saint-Pierre Plamondon would be receiving a letter from a lawyer, and there would be a lawsuit pending for defamation and libel.
Wow.
And he's not talking about real issues, another squandered opportunity. And I think this helps Christine Fréchette. But Charles Milliard has a problem, even though that's completely out of bounds by PSPP.
Yeah.
Charles Milliard, here's the thing. We still don't have the UPAC report or the Elections Quebec report on the Pablo Rodriguez scandal.
Yeah, exactly. Although, arguably, Milliard probably would be able to distance himself from that. Look, we don't want to open that can of worms,
but it
David.
would be bad press.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
It's going to be another news cycle where he's going to have to talk about it.
Right. Okay, well, listen, we'll open that can of worms another day. Always great talking to you, though. Thank you.
All right, have a great weekend.
You too. That's David Heurtel, former Quebec Liberal cabinet minister and political analyst.
Hello, Canada.
This is Bryan Adams Radio, hosted by Bryan Adams himself.
We'll play a few of mine, a ton of my favorites, and some must-hear behind-the-scenes stories from the world of rock and roll. One thing about doing rock and roll so long is you end up meeting a lot of the people that you admire. Sometimes you even get to work with them.
It's only love, and that's all. Bryan Adams Radio. Now available on the free iHeartRadio app.
Everybody